Another pandemic record. Daily high case counts in Windsor-Essex and Ontario. Let's take a look at the numbers here. 272 new cases in Windsor-Essex today, the most ever recorded in a day locally. And Ontario has a record high of more than 3,000 new cases announced this morning. It's been a bad month. Let's take a look at how the spread of this virus is impacting Windsor-Essex just in December. The number that you're looking at now there shows the total number of cases from March up to November 30th, 3,672. That number doubled in December alone, now at 7,551 cases, according to the provincial numbers. Now, these numbers you're looking at here are the total number of deaths. It's the same idea, same trend. It's hard to process this amount of loss. As you can see, the staggering rise of deaths in Windsor-Essex. 8 more people have died of COVID-19, announced by the health unit just this morning. With these record cases, the need for vaccines is that much more urgent. Health officials say Windsor-Essex is above its target, even though a chunk of staff at long-term care and retirement homes are refusing the vaccine. CBC's Katerina Georgieva has more.
The goal is to limit the amount of vaccines in a freezer and get them into people's arms. And that's what we've been doing.
More than 2,000 people in Windsor-Essex have received the Pfizer shot. This first round for staff at long-term care and retirement homes. The total so far above the hospital's target. The CEO says they've used up all their first dose shots and now borrowing from dose 2, with the promise of more shipments coming next week. But not everyone wants the shot. Mouget says 21% of long-term care and retirement home staff are refusing or delaying getting the vaccine.
Some might change their mind, so we'll see, and we'll be ready for them if they do change their mind.
He says nearly all staff who want a shot have gotten a shot. They've also reached more homes than initially planned. At first, only staff at homes not in outbreak could get shots. Mouget says public health changed the rules. Now, some can, depending on the extent of the outbreak in their home. 5 or 6 homes are still unable to get the vaccine out of the 16 in outbreak. Now, the hospital is moving on to other groups, Indigenous peoples and those working in congregate settings.
Most were very relieved, actually.
Staff at Community Living Windsor were told earlier this week they're next.
I think that on Tuesday, when we were making those phone calls, was probably the best day I've had since this all started.
The agency supports individuals with intellectual needs, and it's dealt with a few outbreaks this year. Cook says 60% of staff have agreed to the shot.
Everybody needs to kind of pitch in and do their part, and I figured this is one of the ways I can do it. So yeah, I wasn't hesitant about it. I was excited about it.
As early as a month ago, though, Reinhardt was unsure.
I was against it. They're rushing it. It's not going to be good. But all of the information that I've read about how this vaccine actually does work, I was okay with it.
Meanwhile, the province has been criticized for not moving fast enough with vaccinations. The health unit received Moderna shots yesterday, but won't start administering to residents of long-term care and retirement homes until Monday. And that has some people questioning the delay. The medical officer of health says they're gathering data, training staff, getting the proper documentation in order. In a statement, he says, "We are working with the priority long-term care and retirement homes to organize everything and start administering the vaccine as soon as possible." As for the hospital, which is managing the Pfizer shots, Mouget says it's not possible for them to move any faster than they already are. Katerina Georgieva, CBC News, Windsor.
Now, you heard Katerina talk about long-term care and retirement homes. Let's take a quick look at some of the 14 places that are in outbreak here in Windsor-Essex. The most recent numbers from the village at St. Clair, according to the province on your screen now. This is the largest active outbreak in the region. So far, 24 people have died of COVID-19. At Berkshire Care Centres, 7 people have died of COVID-19. That outbreak started about 3 weeks ago, according to the local health unit. And Extendicare in Tecumseh is the 3rd largest active outbreak by cases. There have been residents that have died, but the provincial government won't specify how many if there are less than 5 people. That's because of privacy concerns. Ontario's Finance Minister Phillips has resigned from his cabinet post. It comes just days after the public learned that he traveled to the Caribbean island of St. Bart's this month. The Ford government has been urging people to stay home during the pandemic and avoid non-essential travel. Phillips returned to Toronto this morning and offered this apology.
It was a significant error in judgment, a dumb mistake, and again, I apologize for it. I regret it, but all I can do now is make that apology and move forward.
And this afternoon, Ford announced that Phillips had resigned. In a statement, the Premier said, at a time when the people of Ontario have sacrificed so much, today's resignation is a demonstration that our government takes seriously our obligation to hold ourselves to a higher standard. After 52 years, the Crisis Centre at the Downtown Mission is closing. It's come down to a lack of funding, not a lack of need. The pandemic had the Downtown Mission reassessing their core programs, and the executive director of the mission says they weren't able to fully fund this crisis line. So in the best interest of the community, it was shut down. Over the decade, many people got help from that service. He recalls when they helped one of their youngest, a preteen in the county.
She was home alone and hungry, and so it took a long time. It took a few weeks for the caller or the volunteer to get that caller to open up about who she was and where she is, and we were able to get her help. If we're fortunate enough to have loved ones in our lives and people that we can kind of bounce things off of, then great. But if we're not, who do we call? And the distress center at the Downtown Mission was that place. Unfortunately, now I believe that we've just created a gap. We've just created a void for many people. And there's some great lines out there, but their mandate is different than the distress centers was.
And you heard him talk about who do you call. There is still help for those who are in crisis. There's the Hotel de Grace Healthcare Community Crisis Line, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, the number on your screen there. Family Services Windsor-Essex has a support line as well. The Distress and Crisis Ontario Responders, you can text that number that you're seeing on your screen there. You can also chat online from 2 in the afternoon until 2 in the evening or reach over the phone. Those numbers are also available on our website. Dramatic photos here from the scene of where a Via Rail train struck a car in Lakeshore. Police say that it happened last night. This was just after 6 p.m. on Golfview Drive near Valentine Avenue. The driver was lucky enough to escape the vehicle before the collision. He wasn't injured, nor was anyone on the train, but the driver's been charged with failing to give way to railway equipment under the Railway Safety Act. We're just hours away from marking a new year on our calendars, but the global pandemic that's truly defined this year hasn't gone away, and it's forcing people everywhere to change up their plans for New Year's Eve. With more, we're joined now live by CBC's Sanjay Maru. Sanjay, what exactly are people going to do this year? It's all changed.
That's right, Chris. A lot indeed has changed. I'll tell you this, I have lived in Windsor-Essex all my life. I have frequented downtown Windsor for a number of New Year's past, but what you see behind me is something I thought I'd never see in my lifetime. Take a look at the scene behind me, or rather the lack of a scene behind me. With the exception of a few cars driving by, in the last 20 minutes, I've actually been doing a head count of the amount of people I've seen walking on the sidewalk. Less than 10 people that I've seen here in downtown Windsor around this 6 o'clock hour. And that's something that you virtually never see, especially in years past, especially on New Year's Eve when there'd be tons of people frequenting the streets at this hour. And of course, the name of the game this year is staying in. That's been the recommendation from public health since this pandemic all started, particularly as concerns arise that people would gather for New Year's. And that means you're not going to see the usual hustle and bustle here in downtown Windsor, but that is having a major effect on businesses.
Unfortunately, due to the lockdown, things have changed.
Normally packed for New Year's Eve, this restaurant, like many others, is forced to keep its dining room seats empty. Calls have been coming in for New Year's pre-orders over the last few days, but Souk says it's not enough to make up for the revenue that would have been generated had diners been allowed inside.
We're trying to make the best out of it, and fingers crossed it's a better year ahead of us.
With 2020 being a year that had us thinking about the people around us more than ever, some New Year's resolutions are becoming more personal.
I want to to eat healthier, more fruit and more vegetables. Making cookies with my family.
To go a little less insane because of the coronavirus.
A virus that took over many people's daily lives in 2020. But a psychologist says it's important for people to reflect on living through such a once-in-a-lifetime occurrence as we enter 2021.
All the things that you thought were so important, all the stuff you get stressed out about at work or in your relationships, or things you think you need to have or you don't have, or what if, things that aren't really relevant, this is an opportunity to let them go.
Staying indoors became commonplace for many this year, and that isn't changing as 2021 rapidly approaches.
We try to support local as much as possible, and they happen to have a couple of New Year's Eve meals that was like, oh, yeah, we deserve a treat too. So I'm picking those up for it this evening.
We are going to order in some Chinese food, and we have all kinds of pop and chips and some mozzarella sticks ready to go.
And over in Sarnia, calls from the region's Chamber of Commerce to support local businesses during what's normally one of the busiest time for restaurants were heard loud and clear. Take the Southside Kitchen, for example, which sold out its pre-orders for New Year's Eve.
I've worked so hard for so long now, and I've lived in Alberta for 14 years, and now I get to cook for my hometown, and we're just having a lot of fun.
And one common thread, Chris, that I heard from a number of people I spoke with today is the idea that this year, not just this night, but this year has been so exhausting that they plan on heading to bed before midnight. They're not even waiting for midnight for them to, celebrate, stay up for New Year's. They're just going to hit the hay kind of early. And I also asked people today what they're most looking forward to as they look ahead to 2021. And two things came up most of all. Number one, the idea that they can maybe go outside more, and also getting vaccinated. Chris.
Thanks for this, Sanjay. CBC's Sanjay Maru live from downtown Windsor tonight. Now, this is the time of year when we like to catch up with local leaders to go over the year that was. Leamington's Mayor Hilda McDonald certainly had a lot to say in our interview. Very frank about the pandemic pivots that were made, but also about what it took to get Premier Doug Ford's attention while COVID-19 spread among migrant workers in the county. Here's part of our conversation from earlier this month.
It's been difficult. I'm very glad I had the year I had last year because I know it is possible to have a really good year. But this year has been challenging on a lot of levels because you see the situation that folks find themselves in, and yet you can't, your hands are tied because we don't have, I always say to people, municipal government is basically the bottom of the food chain. Like, we have the least amount of power, and yet we are what the residents know. We are the government that they know best because we're their neighbors, we're their friends, we're their relatives, for heaven's sake. So yeah, it's been an incredible year. Certainly a learning. There has been a lot of learning and growing as a leader, I would say. And we used this word the other day in a conversation I had. We've learned to pivot and pivot quickly. All of us, from the top to the bottom. And that is something government has never really been known to do, is pivot quickly, right? It takes 18 months to get something done if you're fairly efficient. But we have learned to pivot, and I think we're getting better at that, and that might bode well for the future. And we're learning to adapt, which again was not something we were known for.
It's really interesting when you talk about how, as a municipal leader, you're on the ground in the community. But at times, we've talked about it, you had difficulties getting people in power like Doug Ford to listen to you at first. Why do you think that took so long?
He listens now.
How did you get to that point?
Well, you know what? I also didn't think that was in my realm of being able to do that. Who do I think I am, calling the premier of the province? But after repeatedly hearing how Mayor Dilkens had spoken with the premier, I called Mayor Dilkens and I said, why are you talking to the premier? You don't know about migrant workers like I know about migrant workers. Premier should be calling me, not because I'm me, Hilda McDonald, but because I'm me, because I am the mayor of the municipality of Leamington that is home to the majority of these workers. And so he gave me a phone number to call. And I left a message and got no return phone call. So then we used the power of Twitter. And let me tell you, I got a call the next day. Did I want to be that? No, not particularly. I had no choice. If I get painted into a corner and I see there's no choice, I take what I have to do and do it, whether I like it or I'm comfortable or not. And I think we're all doing that. We're all doing things beyond our scope as mayor. I had one person send me a message that said, "You are so out of your realm. This should not be mayoral duties." Listen, buddy. Nobody's doing what they normally do. We have had to pivot ourselves. We have had to be there for folks where that is normally not in our job description. We've had to be there for business and organizations and industry where normally mayors don't speak to that. But it is a new day, and we have got to get through this and out of this, and the only way to do that is to speak up and be heard.
As part of our year-end interview with Hilda McDonald, we also spoke with the head of Windsor-Essex's Chamber of Commerce and Dr. Wajid Ahmed, the local medical officer of health. You can find all of those interviews online on our website, cbc.ca/Windsor. But to look more about what's happening in the future, we're going to bring in Nick Sirkovich next and take a peek at that forecast. This right here is a rare find in Windsor-Essex. You might have to squint a little bit, but I think you'll be able to see it now. This is the northern saw-whet owl. Very difficult to spot. They're only the size of a pop can. And as you can see right here, it blends in perfectly with its surroundings. They're not native to Essex County, but they migrate through the area during November and December. If you're hoping to get a shot of the rare owl, a tip from the photographer here, they sit still during the day and are almost always found in cedar trees. Joining us now for a live look at the weather is Nick Sirkovich. Is the forecast going to be a hoot?
Really?
I'm sorry.
That's how you want to go out in 2020 with that?
I'm not proud of myself either, Nick.
Yeah. All right. We're looking at a storm system that's heading up from Texas. So why am I starting here? This is going to be our weather maker as we move into tomorrow. We've got special weather statements in effect from Windsor up toward about the Toronto area. There are potential for prolonged periods of freezing rain and mixed precipitation. Today we're looking at generally clearing sky cover as we head through tonight, and heading through the forecast into tomorrow. Look for cloud cover to roll in through the early morning hours, and then that system makes its way through. So closer to about the noon hour, mixed precipitation around the Windsor area. Chance we're going to see some patchy freezing rain in there as well. Better chance we're going to see it as you head further east. Sort of Sarnia sits on the line, the rain-snow line, so good chance you're going to see some freezing precipitation there as well. Switches over to rainfall for the Windsor area, and mostly a rain event for Windsor, Leamington, Chatham-Kent. But as you go a little bit further north, more in the way of snowfall. Some areas up around Goderich, for example, likely to pick up 10, maybe 15 centimeters of snow. London's kind of in the mix there, and that's why the special weather statement. So we head through tomorrow. Kind of clears out by the time we hit Saturday afternoon. Still cloud cover on Saturday, and then another system heading to the Windsor area for Sunday. That one could bring with it some snowfall. And it's interesting for Sunday because their models are showing different things, but there is a potential for 5+ centimeters of snow at that. So we'll have to watch as we get closer. -2 degrees right now in Windsor, -1 out toward London. Temperatures close to the seasonal mark as we head through the overnight period. -5 degrees, and wind chills not too bad, about -6 to -8. Into tomorrow, again, watch for mixed precipitation. So we're going to see that starting in the Windsor area, and then Windsor switches over to rainfall pretty quickly. Same story with Leamington and Chatham-Kent, but as you head further north and east, good chance we're going to see some mixed precipitation in there and some icy conditions. About 15 to 20 millimeters of rain is possible with this system here for the Windsor area. The chance for some icy conditions, 3 degrees as we head into Saturday and Sunday. Again, another system heading our way. And this one, depending on which model you believe right now, it could bring 5+ centimeters of snowfall. So we'll watch for that there. And then kind of a dry but cloudy start to next week. And on that, I say Happy New Year, Chris.
No, that's the way to leave it. Thanks for this, Nick.
Yes.
Appreciate it. Happy New Year, and enjoy the time off if you can take it this weekend.
Thank you, sir. You too.
Now, coming up next, we are going to give the final word of CBC Windsor News in 2020 to a local author talking about representation and why it matters.
p.m.
Representation matters. That's why a local author's first book features a gay lead character, one that features his super abilities rather than his sexuality. Stacey Janser with more.
For me, it's very much one of the things that I think is very, very important in the world right now is queer representation.
A.E. Clarke's debut novel, Grayscale, was formed by his love of superheroes. 10 years ago, he sat down for a novel writing competition and got to work with a key aspect in mind.
I'm a gay man, so it was very, very important for me. I know that any book that I ever write will always have some sort of LGBT character in it, for sure.
The story is set in Toronto, where Clarke was living at the time.
I knew that I wanted to write a gay man who represented me. He's not super stereotypical, and he is kind of an idiot sometimes, but he's human. And him being gay isn't the entirety of his character, which is unfortunately the case with a lot of representation right now.
A subplot in Grayscale revolves around the main character's sister finding out he's gay.
Because that's an important part of every gay man's life. But I knew that I also didn't want it to be the entirety of Jesse's character arc. And so it was difficult kind of writing that line and making sure that it was still important while not being the only important thing about him.
It took time to get the story edited and ready to be sent out. Clarke says he sent his book to dozens of publishers and agents, at one point even giving up, but refocused and sent it out to queer publishers and received some interest.
I nearly fainted. It was something that I had always dreamed about and had wondered if it would ever actually happen. Because a lot of authors never actually get to that point.
His years of hard work will be available this month.
I am super excited and I am super nervous.
But he's ready to let his voice be heard. Stacey Janser, CBC News, Windsor.
And that's it for us here at CBC Windsor News. Don't forget, for news anytime, you can go to our website, cbc.ca/Windsor. We're on social media too. You can check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. It's been a long year. We've had a lot of people help us out through all of this. So for the people like Simon Rice, who produces this show, Ryan and Angela up in Toronto, who are part of our control room team, Mike, who had that beautiful owl shot, from all of us, thank you for what you've done as our community to get through all of this, and we will be there with you when the new year comes, starting on Monday. Thanks again. Have a wonderful evening.